IMDb and get the names of the characters down.
Yeah, I've got them here too. And hello, everyone, to another edition of the Spoiler Room. So glad you joined us tonight. It's a special. It's our second Over the Hill special, a film that's turning 50 years old right along with me. And tonight, it is the Jack Hill cult classic, Switchblade Sisters from 1975. And yes, so we're going to be discussing this very interesting film. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up the chair and popping your favorite drink. I've got another one of those. I'm not promoting it at all. Malibu Splash strawberry coconut ones. Again, it says for sharing. Yeah, what sharing? Wisconsin, right? But I am sharing this podcast tonight with a couple of wonderful crew members. First, he's back with us once again, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Joe Randazzo. Hello, Joe.
Hey, everyone.
So glad you could be here and with us, as well as my right-hand man who keeps coming back for more. He's on my left tonight, but he's still with us. None other than the one and only Ian Simmons. Hey, Ian, how you doing?
I am super excited to be on the show tonight.
I am excited that you're excited. And we have to give a shout out to Miss Angelique Bone. Unfortunately, she could not be with us tonight. She wanted to be. She is with us in spirit. So a shout out to Angelique. But yes, tonight, Switchblade Sisters, 1975, Jack Hill. And Joe, as you always do so well, let's hear that synopsis of Switchblade Sisters.
Hang on. What was the character's name, the leader of the gang? Because I just spaced on it. Lace.
Yeah.
So Lace is overhearing her mom being basically told she's got to get the rent or be evicted. Her and her gang meet up with the guy who's kind of pushing her mom around in the elevator and use their switchblades on him. They go to a little diner where they meet Maggie. Well, they pick on Maggie, try to get her to move from the table. She refuses, and Patch, who is called that because she's
got a patch.
Yeah, she's got a patch over her eye. Pulls out her blade and goes after her, but Maggie's really good with a whip and manages to take her down, and basically neuter the girls in front of the gang of guys that they're into. She ends up kind of becoming a member of the gang because they're kind of impressed with her. There's at the same time this gang war type thing that has to do with these school patrol, which I'm trying to figure that out. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm trying to figure out here. But these guys are so feared that Principal Weasel, which is what they refer to him as, I don't know that they ever gave a real name for him. Principal Weasel apparently counts on them to be the school patrol for some reason. Because why would you not want this vicious
protection?
Gang?
Yeah, why not?
Another high school in the area has shut down. So let me pull up this guy's name as well.
Krabs.
So Krabs. How did I forget that one? Krabs and his gang are coming over to the school, and they have a beef with the other gang, and it just kind of all devolves from there. And there's a car that turns into a tank at one point.
I love this movie.
This movie is wild. This movie is really, really wild. So as Maggie is raped by Dominic.
Nick. Yeah.
By Nick. But apparently Patch is told by one of the guys that Maggie is sleeping with Nick to try to move her way up. And like I mentioned in our group chat, Patch is basically the Iago in this Othello tale. So yeah, there's a little bit of this Lace and Maggie kind of. There's a thing brewing between them. There's so many moving parts to this. I really wow. What else? There's a gang fight in a roller rink. There's a lot going on in this movie
with machine guns.
With machine guns. as high school students, would do.
This
This movie's wild. Eventually, the girls do kind of get behind Maggie more than Lace. We find out Donut, who's apparently Lenny Bruce's daughter.
Really?
Yeah, I was looking up the cast and I'm like, oh, Donut is played by what was her name? I think it was Kitty Bruce.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kitty Bruce. And then when I clicked her name, oh, she's Lenny Bruce's daughter. So yeah, Donut is the kind of the girl that gets abused by the other girls a lot.
She's low on the pecking order quite a bit with just about everyone. She's just kind of.
Was she the one they were pimping out in the men's room?
No, there was
that was someone else. Okay,
that was just a random character pimping out in the men's room of the high school. Yeah.
Yeah, $5. Yeah. Just need you in there till you make us another $20.
Wow.
It's not even voluntary. They just throw the guy in, take his wallet, like, we're gonna charge you.
They take the nerd. Yeah, they take the nerd guy, of course. They grab him, grab his wallet.
What was great is that even he had he was like, I don't want to do that.
What are you complaining about? It's gonna be the best time of your life. Throw him in the men's room with her.
Oh,
this movie's wild. It's one of Quentin Tarantino's favorites, and yeah, I can see that. I've always liked Jack Hill. I like Coffee. I love Spider Baby. If you're a Rob Zombie fan of the Firefly family, that movie, that series is Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Spider Baby more than anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Jack Hill movies, but I've never seen this one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you gave me the impetus to finally watch it, because man, I've been missing out.
Ian, what'd you think? High level of Switchblade Sisters.
Well, as I mentioned in our group chat, again, I started watching this at 4:30 in the morning, and 20 minutes in, I paused the movie and I went to Amazon. I looked it up, and I think I went to Blu-ray.com or something. And Arrow Video put out a really nice looking Blu-ray, and I bought it. Fortunately, it is half off right now, so I only spent like $20. But I'm like, I haven't finished this movie. It's entirely possible that it's going to go south, but for right now, I have to have this thing on my shelf because it is it's life changing. I can't believe they got all of that into 90 minutes. I mean, we haven't even talked about Krabs and his role as like a community organizer.
Yeah.
And there's a subplot. There's a subplot where he and his friends are setting up these charitable like food and vitamin trucks throughout the city, throughout the ghetto. But the vitamins are drugs that they're trying to soft get kids hooked on so they can sell them heroin later. I'm like, and he also, there's this whole thing of like, he has this medallion that he wears around his neck, his prized possession. And his name is like Kravitz, I think that's his full name. So you get the feeling that he's Jewish, but this medallion is it's a Nazi medallion, and there's a whole thing of like the Maggie's initiation into the gang is you got to go get the medallion off of Krabs somehow, and no one thinks she can do it because he's such a bad guy. But Krabs is also, he's a weasel, not to be confused with the principal, but he's also kind of like charismatic and fun in a way that the kind of the guys who are running the main gang, the daggers that are Dagger Debs, that's the female version to the male gang. Those guys are kind of stiff, and they're just like brutes and thugs. Krabs' gang, there's something a little bit more theatrical, more going on, possibly because they're all like hopped up on dope. But I can't get enough of this movie. I can't necessarily recommend it to anybody because I'm afraid I might get put on some kind of a list or ostracized from polite society. But it is incredible, particularly in the last scene where Maggie is getting hauled off by the cops, and she like snaps and starts like giving the. It is like an old gangster movie. She's like, yo, I'll be back, cops. You see, you haven't seen the last of me. See you, me and the girls will be back. You better watch your backs.
Yelling all this blood-drenched teeth. Oh, because there's another great climactic fight at the very end.
There's so many interesting fights, and well, the gang thing is interesting. It's almost like And yes, folks, I'm going to be making probably lakes out of puddles here. But what's interesting is Dominic and the Daggers feel a little bit like more of your old school greaser gang, whereas Krabs gang feels more like the gang stories that you heard, because while everybody equates gangs with criminal elements in that today, a long time gangs were formed to protect their neighborhood from whatever. They actually helped out people. They actually, sure, they started out good, and then, you know, things got corrupt, as a lot of things do, but gangs on the whole were more positive than negative impact in their neighborhoods. So Krabs guys doing, yes, they're hooking the kids, but as far as on the surface, they seem like they're actually doing some community service to that with it. You know, I mean, they're even meeting with the mayor, for crying out loud, at one point. They talk about, you know, whereas Dom and the Daggers and that and their girls are far more like your 50s, early 60s gang, you know, like greaser gang, like a violent version of you know, the Thunderbird or whatever from John Travolta from Grease.
I thought you were going to say the Jets and the Sharks
or the
from West Side Story.
No, they're like pretty violent.
They're kind of like the juvenile delinquent. It is kind of partially a juvenile delinquent movie. And like there's a lot in this that I'm like, okay, that's kind of because you have the on the one hand, like Ian had mentioned, you have the super organized, kind of legitimate on the one side gang run by Krabs, and then you have the violent, we're just going to kick the shit out of you thugs on the other side. And there's not really any good people in this movie.
Yeah, well, the cops are. I mean, the two cops we meet, they are morally ambiguous at best, but you can kind of see the reasoning, because they don't want to break up the gangs when they get into activity unless they start messing with civilians. But their philosophy is, hey, if they shank each other to death, we just have to be here with the meat wagon, and they're helping us clean up the community.
Which when the cops said that, I was just like, that's smart. Just let them do it if they're not hurting anybody else.
But it's interesting, Mark, you bring up that the difference in styles and almost eras between the gangs, because you look at the Daggers. What do? They're sitting around like this rundown, what you might call the clubhouse, playing cards, bullshitting, you know, kind of making out with each other, the guys and the girls. They're not doing anything. Now, they're all supposed to be high school students, and I don't know how old Dom and his friends are supposed to be, but like Lace keeps talking about how she's not going to get into real trouble because she's a juvenile, and so I guess are the other friends, but they all look like they're 25.
Well, yeah.
Hey, did you guys pick up on what, Hooks? I think that was Dom's second in command. Did you recognize him?
Yeah, Hook.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ron Stark.
Yeah, from that 70s show.
From that 70s show, yeah. I caught that this time, because when I first watched this, because I was hooked on a friend of ours, and he's been a guest on Spoiler Room, filmmaker Andrew Shearer talked about it, and as well as Derek Carey at he talked about it. You know, I'm like, you know, Jack Hill fans, and I'm like, oh, and I ended up watching it, and I loved it. So that's why I wanted to try to work it into our, when, you know, I came up with this idea, like, oh, it's 75. All right, we got to talk about this, because this film is wild. And you're right, Ian. They pack so much story into this 90-some minute film. It is crazy of where you end up from where you start and how much they cover.
Well, especially because like 3-4 minutes of that is opening and closing credits. I mean, this movie is insanely tight, and I can't sing the opening song, but it's like, you know, no matter how rotten men are, that'll never match the evil that's in a woman's heart. And it's like really catchy. And it's the theme, it's the thesis for this movie, because there is some stone cold treachery going on here. That whole roller rink ambush, Maggie kind of takes the heat because it was her idea to go there to attack the rival gang, but they ended up showing up with machine guns. There's that whole ambush, but it turns out it was Lace trying to set Maggie up to be assassinated so that, you know, she wouldn't take the top spot. This reminded me of last year we were talking about all the kind of the Scarface movies and the mob pictures. It's that same template of the person who's trying to rise to the top through the ranks, and they have to get to this other person, and there's backstabbing and romantic treachery. It's strange to see this kind of an exploitation film also have such a classical sensibility about it. I mean, it's a real movie, but it's also the trashiest thing you've ever seen.
That's Jack Hill is a big fan of Shakespeare. So he based this one on Othello. He based Coffee on Richard III. So a lot of these movies, it's kind of like what Lloyd Kaufman does now. Yeah. He makes these Shakespearean trauma movies, and that's what Jack Hill was doing. And he's another acolyte of Corman. So yeah, that's where he gets like that. If it feels classical to you, that's probably why. That's who he is, or was. He passed away recently. But yeah, that's the kind of filmmaker he was. He just had that classical sensibility, but he knew what sold, and he knew through Corman, because he came up through Corman, he knew that he had the movies that he would have to make to sell to drive-ins would be trash. Yeah, it's a trashy movie, but he wanted at heart to make Shakespeare. But this is the best he could do.
The version that I saw of the film had an intro from Quentin Tarantino talking about his love with this film. Because my buddy, because of Plex, so he had the Quentin Tarantino Presents version. So you had Tarantino giving an intro, and Tarantino said one of the reasons he loves it is, in the beginning you're watching it going, man, is this a piece of like trash? And this dialogue is like so like just over the top and not really great. He goes, but about halfway through the film, you find yourself caring about these characters that the dialogue, you're like, I shouldn't be feeling like this with these characters, but you do. It's so wild because you're watching these exploitation elements, and yet the story, as you mentioned, is tight, and these characters are well performed. I mean, I love the performance of everyone in this film too. It's like, man, you watch it, you're just fascinated. You just have to. You're like, wait, what? Now we're dealing with a militant group in the,
Well, even I mean, even there, you wonder. I mean, you get a little bit of the backstory about how Maggie knows this group of. It's like a commune of black lesbian communist revolutionaries.
He's not exaggerating either.
That's
exactly basically how they were introduced.
That's exactly how they are.
But the thing about that is you get into like kind of the politics of it, and they're talking about like, we don't need no man, whatever. Yeah. The two posters that are up in their compound are dudes. Like one is Mao, and I didn't catch the other one. Was later on in one of the other rooms. I think it was like the shooting gallery. They had a poster of Angela Davis. So that was something. But it is this kind of a weird farcical alliance. It's a movie that is political and apolitical at the same time. But yeah, what I loved about it is that I was constantly surprised from scene to scene. It keeps escalating and getting stranger and stranger without going off the rails. You get the feeling that Jack Hill was in complete control of the story from start to finish. When that armored car when the car shows up and then the armored, plating slides up on the glass, you're like, okay, now it's time to rock and roll. I completely believe that they put this together. And
it just turned into a Mad Max movie now.
Yeah, on the streets in the ghetto, you've got like people just like running for their lives, and like it was like reminded me of, what is it, Death Wish 3? I think one that the climax.
Yes.
All out war in the ghetto.
I grew up in Brooklyn around the time that they shot Death Wish 3. I would have been like 6 or 7. I was like, is this real? Like, apparently that was what the neighborhood of Brooklyn really looked like. But yeah, this did remind me a little bit of Death Wish 3, although that movie might be a little more over the top than this, even.
Oh yeah,
just a little over the top. Oh, and we did mention that this a militia group is led by a character named Muff.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, all of these elements in here lead you to go, whatever. And then you're watching it, and it's just fascinating because you're like, wait, these are real characters. There's a real story here. We have an arc going on. What the hell is going on?
Yeah, because it comes out so naturally. Because on the one hand, it feels like Jack Hill just sat down and just wrote down the wildest shit he could come up with. But then when you take a step back and look at it, you could actually see the structure form. And you can actually see that, oh my God, everything here was plotted. There's no thread that's left hanging. And that's what's really amazing about it. He makes it seem effortless. It's one of the reasons I really like his movies.
Yeah, I mean he's great. I mean I discovered I think Spider Baby first, and I didn't know that he was involved in like Coffee and Foxy Brown. You know, I discovered those Pam Grier movies later, and they're all. I'm a big Jack Hill fan, but I had not seen this movie because again, much like the Coen brothers, it's like you mentioned stuff in the filmography. Like, wait, he did that movie too. But with this, Joe, almost to your point, it feels like I'm not saying this is how it was, but it feels like he wrote a real movie with complex characters and surprises and kind of these evolving plot details. And then he just like started piling on the sleaze and the exploitation of it. You've got this great complex character in Patch, who at the end of the movie ends up getting shunned by the bikers, not the bikers, the titular Switchblade Sisters. And it's
the Jezebels.
It's this real moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Jezebels. It's this real moment of kind of devastation for her. And that's a real thing, but she's called Patch because she's got an eye patch. In any other movie, she would have been like the muscle or like the fourth lead character, not really much going on, but she's a central part of this movie, and it's easy to write her off because Donuts, the overweight girl who can't stop eating, Muff, well, we can kind of guess what her story is. But that's my point, is like you've got this kind of like a character that you can identify by a physical characteristic, and that can be kind of off-putting, but if you get to know them, you find out that they're one of the richest characters in this whole thing.
And you could see the influence that Patch had on Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
This along with Christina Lindbergh's character, and they call her One Eye, are definitely the Daryl Hannah character in Kill Bill.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what's also interesting too is for it being put in the category of exploitation film, because it has those exploitation elements. At the same time, Jack Hill, as he's done in his filmography, as you mentioned, Ian, with Coffee and with the Pam Grier films and that, while they are shown to end up having vulnerable moments, the women in here are still strong characters. Yeah. I mean, and that's what's interesting is a lot of time people equate like, oh, you got the nudity or whatever, you got the exploitation elements. Oh, they don't, the women, they're just there for that. But no, these women are strong. They've got, personalities too. They got characters, Maggie, never actually is into what Dominic does. He assumes, but she's like, yeah, whatever, just get the hell out, and you get that rather serious moment because he comes out when he decides that he's going to force himself on Maggie. Maggie's mom comes out, who is sleeping with the landlord, and this is like a 4-minute scene tops for when he pushes his way into Maggie's apartment, to what happens to when he leaves after the confronting of his mom. But there's like 4 drops of elements to these characters. You learn so much within this just few minutes, and you're just like, wait, what?
Yeah, because she asks, the guy sleeping with her, which we find out is the landlord, because Maggie says mom's paying. Yeah, that's the landlord. Mom's paying the rent. After he leaves. But yeah, he says, no. Do you know who that is? He's the leader of this gang, and I want my building to still be standing tomorrow. So you get a sense by the way, it's a lot of building up by these characters. It's kind of like Donald Pleasance in Halloween. All these other characters keep talking about this gang the way Pleasance talks about Michael Myers. Like, no, look, you don't want anything to do with these people. And also Patch. It's a throwaway line, but she mentions in there, I lost my eye for this gang. So whatever it was, her initiation is why she's wearing the eye patch. So yeah, you find out all these, and the dialogue's fantastic in this movie because of that. Like, there really isn't a wasted line most of the time.
Yeah. It's very sharp. And the performances, they're very strange. Like Lace, the actress who played her, what was her name?
Robbie Lee.
Robbie Lee. I know she went on to do a bunch of like voice acting and like cartoons and stuff later.
That
right?
and a couple of other sleazy movies.
Yeah.
She did a
Sleazy
couple
movies and
of sleazy
cartoons.
movies before this. Yeah, she was in a Lovelace for President movie, I think, and before that, she was in.
I think it's another Corman movie.
I've got IMDb up here. Before that, she was in. Here it is, Big Bad Mama.
Another Corman movie, yeah.
She did Big Bad Mama, Linda Lovelace for President, and Switchblade Sisters, and then she went on mostly to do TV and then voice acting.
Apparently on Rainbow Bright.
On Rainbow Bright and Smurfs.
And the Smurfs and the Pound Puppies.
Yeah. I just want to see Smurfette pulling out a switchblade.
Come near me any further and you're gonna get smurfed. Yeah.
I'll smurf and smurf you.
I'll smurf and smurf you.
Just gotta go get that swastika medallion off of Brainy.
Oh my god, now we're doing Switchblade Sisters with the Smurfs. Oh,
Smurfblade Sisters.
Smurfblades.
The problem is there's only one female Smurf, so it's
gonna be a little awkward. Wow, that went some places. But no, it's one of those things where this is why I love watching films like this, is because they get a bad rap a lot of times, and rightfully so. There's a lot of examples out there of why you get a bad rap, but then you watch something like this and you're like, you can't dismiss it, because the performances, everybody's playing an actual character in here. You get that confrontation with the principal, how he's talking, I mean, you learn so much with this group just from that principal. And I'm like getting like this old, like, well, this is the dark side of Greece sort of thing, and these guys, they do kill one another. They end up in juvie. We end up seeing a fight in juvie, and for just a brief moment, it suddenly becomes a women in prison film. You're just like, wait, what?
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that scene right at the beginning when all the girls get, because the guy who they slashed up in the elevator calls the police, and the police round them up and take them in, and there's a warden type who apparently sexually abuses these young girls who, again, we are told multiple times are juveniles.
So they're going to get out in a while. Yeah.
Yeah. They go after Maggie. Maggie holds her own, and the rest of the girls see this as, hey, this is our opportunity to fight back. So it turns into one of those. It turns into But that's a women in prison movie meets like Girls in Chains, and Crime School in those early 30s movies with like the East Side Kids, where they were like, oh, they're rounded up and thrown into juvie and they're being picked on and one of them dies, like Hell's Kitchen. Bringing up movies like two people listening are going to know, if that.
Well, they're probably going to ask, wait, Gordon Ramsay was in this movie? No. But that's the thing. You said something, Joe, that reminded me of something that I said earlier about the surprises, because after that arrest and they got thrown into the juvie situation with, I think was her name Mama or Mom or something like that?
They were calling her Mama. I don't know if that's her name. I can look real quick while you make your point.
But you think that, okay, so this is going to be a girls in prison movie or a girls in juvie movie.
For 5 minutes.
Yeah, for 5 minutes. And then they're back out on the street, or at least Maggie is, while the other girls stay behind. And Lace is like, I'll be out in a week. And then it kicks off the entire plot and treachery of the film. So you never know exactly what kind of movie you're watching. Now, I got a question for you guys, because this is not my forte. I think I've seen a few blaxploitation films, and then the Jack Hill, Foxy Brown coffee movies. I can't say that I've seen a lot of any women in prison movies or movies of this ilk. Are they all like this? Are they all this good? Because when I'm watching Switchblade Sisters, I'm thinking, have I been missing out? Is it all this wonderful, or is this special? Because it feels special. But if there's like 50 other movies that are this caliber, I got homework.
A lot of them lean more into the sleaze and aren't as entertaining as this. But the cool thing is like I watched 3 women in prison movies in a row, which I didn't intend to see John Vernon as like the warden in like all 3 of them. Which is just like, what is this? Why is he the warden in every one of these?
What was it?
Yeah, usually they're not as entertaining as this. Usually it's just more for the sleaze factor. There's some that are special, like they are actually really good, but they're few and far between. A lot of these movies are considered just trash movies because that's just what they are. Like a lot of them, you could probably not watch most women in prison movies and not miss anything. It's very rare you get like something really good.
See, and yeah, so I mean that's what it is Jack Hill was kind of a special to where he could bring both to the genre, whereas most of the other ones, I mean, you know, Russ Meyer always leaned more towards the sleaze than the story, and here Jack Hill has a nice balance of both. I mean, you mentioned great examples, Ian. There's a reason why, you know, Pam Grier, a lot of people know her name and why they revere those films is because of Jack Hill behind it, because he's able to bring those elements yet also bring you characters that are actual characters and people and not just like objects,
and they're actually interesting.
And they're interesting.
The characters are actually interesting. Even when you look at Spider Baby, when you look at Coffee, when you look at, Foxy Brown, all these movies, he does build interesting characters.
Yeah, I mean, even those that don't really have speaking parts in this film too much in Switchblade Sisters, you look at them and they look like they have a story. I mean, all of these people, you know, feel like people. They aren't just your tropes. I mean, they exude the trope or the stereotype, but at the same time, you look at them and the way they're behaving and how they're interacting with one another, and they feel like people. They don't just feel like objects or, you know, a little pawns or something. They're just like, okay, we're just going to get to A to B to C. Because here you're just like, and I love the Maggie character too, because they get where they could easily just play it to where Maggie's making a power play, like right away from the start after the, you know, the minute she, like, because we've seen that story before where the leader of the gang takes sympathy on a new member, brings the new member in, and then new member betrays the shit out of them, you know. And in this one, you do get the kind of feeling like Maggie wants to actually work with Lace. She's not really looking for a power play necessarily. She just wants to be part of the gang and help. Yeah, she might want to be on an upper tier, but you don't really feel, at least in the beginning, until she starts learning about what Maggie did, to where she wants to take over Lace's spot.
Well, I mean, Lace is an interesting character too, because she's a very paranoid person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even before Maggie, there's a line of dialogue with some of the other gang members about issues they've had in the past with other gang members trying to get her spot,
right? And
her having to kind of put them in their place. And you get the feeling that some of those people aren't necessarily "quote unquote" in the gang anymore. But at one point, she ends up pregnant, and she tells Dom, and it goes like horribly wrong. It's also a bit of restraint. You know, we're talking about the exploitation. There's a little bit of nudity in this movie, but you know, when we do see Lace naked in bed, it's like in silhouette, right?
Yeah.
You can't really see anything, although you can tell that she's not wearing any clothes. She also dies via silhouette, which is pretty fascinating
and interesting kind of choice.
Yeah. But there's that vulnerability to her where she's not like the reprobate sleazebag monster that you think she is in the beginning of the film. She actually does have a heart. She does kind of want something better for herself, even if she has no idea what that is. She kind of sees the baby as an opportunity for her and Dom to like kind of lock things down and maybe do something different and real with their lives. And Dom doesn't want anything to do with it. possibly understandably, because I mean, let's just assume that he is in high school. Like maybe he's 19 or something. I don't know how old he's supposed to be, but you can see how that prospect really scares him, and it's kind of an assault on his masculinity in some way, that he won't be able to be the top dog if he's got to change diapers and get a straight job and all that stuff, which he tells her, and he throws some cash at her and says to go, he's like, you know what to do, and then he like leaves. It's a heartbreaking scene, and Lace is kind of different throughout the rest of the picture. She's more desperate, and part of it is that rejection. Part of it is that Dom gets blown away, like in the next scene that they're together. So she's just kind of spiraling out of control, and she doesn't know who to listen to. There's the bit where they're going to assassinate Maggie during the big street brawl with the armored cars and machine guns at the end, but they also need to take care of Krabs before he can, they have to make it look like an accident, essentially, because Krabs knows that Maggie is the one who set up the roller rink ambush. And there's all these moving parts to this, but Lace is not in control to the degree that she thinks she is. And you can see her like melting down from earlier on in the film than we would have expected, all the way to the very end. So when she dies, it's not like, oh great, the top dog, the evil villain, has been vanquished. She's like, no, this is really sad.
Yeah, I thought if anything, the top villain who was going to be vanquished would be Dominic, or would be Nick. That's what I thought it was gonna. That's where I thought it was gonna go. He dies halfway through it. I'm like, okay. Now where do we go? And it still got interesting. So,
well, even halfway.
Again, the constant barrage of surprises, and not in the annoying where it's like, oh, we're gonna throw a twist on top of a twist on top of a twist. It's just the story is allowed to take you places that you wouldn't expect, and there's no way you can tell where any of this is going from the first 5 minutes of the film.
No, and it moves organically, and it feels naturally organically, to whereas some films you either got foreshadowing like this or whatnot, where you're like, oh, this is how this is going to go. But this one, yeah, you just watch it move and you're like, oh, that actually makes sense where this goes. And at one point, like you guys mentioned, like 2/3 of the way through the film, the guys get removed. Like they just get, the guy gang is gone, and it's suddenly the Jezebels now. They're like, nope, you guys get the hell out of here. You're worthless anyway, because you guys ran, because most of the guys and stuff ran or proved ineffective during the ambush. And Maggie, even helps Lace. That's why I love these characters, because there's points through this film where Lace gets in trouble and Maggie helps, or vice versa, even though they've got kind of this feud bubbling underneath. And it's fascinating, because you're like, wait, I'm thinking about this too much. This film is supposed to just be guns and nudity of blood. And why are these characters like this? Got layers and complexity to them,
It's a beautiful thing. You mentioned something great about the daggers disappearing from the movie, like right before the shit hits the fan. I was expecting, because Hook, he disappears along with the other guys. You're expecting them to come back in some capacity, right? Either maybe forming some kind of an alliance with Krabs, versus the Jezebels and Muff and her gang, or just something. But no, they're just gone. It doesn't feel, it's not very movie like in that way.
Yeah, it's up to our conflict comes down to Krabs gang and the late Jezebels. That's it. I mean, the daggers kind of fall apart, which is interesting, because you almost get the feeling like the daggers, they really played tough, but it's really revealed as the film goes on, when it comes down to very much brass tacks, they aren't.
No, they're not. They're not very competent.
Well, I mean, there's a distinction. They are tough. I mean, they will fuck you up. But I think the lack of competence is, that's more the key there. They have little competence, but too much confidence. They don't see the trouble that's brewing in their own
Mhm.
midst. They take the girls for granted, which I think goes back to that what you were saying, Mark, about how this feels very much like a gang from a different era. It's that kind of chauvinist, keep the dames in the corner. They're all they're pretty to look at, but we don't have to take them seriously. Whereas this is a 1970s like women's liberation kind of feminism. Like a bloody nude fairy tale almost or an allegory for empowerment, saying you better watch out. It's all in that opening song, like it's our time now.
Well, and you get some legitimate moments of like not really nail biting tension, but there's tension. We get it in the opening. I mean, the film, you're right, he goes to the Corman. Jack Hill follows that Corman school of filmmaking. The first 5 minutes of this film pull you in because you get introduced to your characters, you get a moment, and then you get that wonderful moment in the largest elevator in the world where you've got the guy who was extorting money from Lace's mom about the TV, not giving him a week, not extorting, but
oh, that's right. It was the TV, not the rent.
And it was the TV.
Yeah.
Well, that's honestly, I thought I was in trouble in the first 5 minutes of this movie, or the first 3 minutes, because I was on his side.
Yeah.
Because what did you have there? she had rented this television, and she owed money on it, and he came to collect. That's why you have people in collections, for people who don't pay. And she's like, well, my kids aren't going to eat this week. He's like, you owe me $40 for the television. I got to take the TV or I got to take $40. And she's like, what, you got to take the $40 out of my kid's mouth? He's like, I'm not saying that, lady. And then she hands him the $40 and he leaves the television. Right. He's not the bad guy in that situation, right? Because he's got a job to do. That's why he is working. Then he gets into the elevator. And then you've got this crazy gang of women that he has no connection with. He doesn't know any of them. I don't even think he'd seen Lace in that room.
I don't think he had either.
She was listening in from her bedroom door. So he is a complete victim in this situation. And when they attack him in the elevator, I thought, did they kill him? Because they all pull out their switchblades and then they all go in for the kill. So later on, when the cops show up and you see him and it's like a cartoon. His shirt is in like these little cute little ribbons. I'm like,
sure, they didn't actually kill him. Yeah,
right. It does look like that.
I'm like, there's not even any blood. I'm like, I don't know about this shit. But then next they go to the juvie hall and that. But so it's a solid opening. But you really gotta trust Jack Hill because there's a moment where like, am I gonna have to turn this off?
They do give the salesman a slightly little sleazy element to him, but not much.
Why? Because he notices an attractive woman.
Well, he was leering, but yeah.
So that's how people get together, Mark. They make eyes at each other.
I guess that's true. Mine was a little different, but but you're right though. But it also, while him being the innocent overall, it immediately tells you what type of gang you're dealing with here with the girls, though, and the fact they didn't kill him when you expect him to, you're like, oh, okay, this is kind of, and that's from where they start to where they end shows you how they progress. Kind of, they get darker as the film goes along to where they weren't killing this innocent guy before. They mostly were teasing the shit out of him and stole the $40 he took from Lace's mom, basically, to all out gunfight in the freaking street.
Yeah. I don't want to get too much into it, but I'm like, and maybe this is because it's a function of youth. They're mostly supposed to be juveniles, but so that they, by definition, do not have the ability to project consequences into the future. But did they think by attacking the collection guy and stealing his money that the store or business, whatever, that owns that television that they're leasing or renting out weren't going to send somebody else or the cops to say, hey, what did you do to our enforcer guy? Like, it's dumb.
Well, it leads them, though, but it kind of fits them in their mentality because, as we like as we like to call some of the college kids around here, the immortals, and
Yes.
they think because they're juvies, they can do a lot of this stuff. And we'll go to juvie hall for a week or two. We got to deal with, the sleazy warden, but then we'll leave and we're out again to do whatever.
Her name is Mom.
Mom, yeah.
Well, that's the name of the character. So I don't know if
that's what they call her, but
could be the same mom from. It's the same alias from Dr. Detroit.
Oh, there you go. But it does fit that. I get what you're saying, but at the same time, their mentality is we're juvies. We can do pretty much whatever crime we want. We'll just get out, we'll go to juvie hall, we'll serve a little bit of time there and we'll be out, which also is making a statement about your legal system. But anyway.
Yeah.
No, but that's the thing is like by the end of this movie, I'm okay with the way that it opens because I trust, again, Jack Hill, and it ends up in a place that completely makes sense. It still doesn't 100% work for me, but I like it better than I did when on the kind of cold first watch.
And it's an intense, rather brutal fight at the climax of this film when Maggie and Lace finally have it out. Holy crap! You watch that, you're like, wow.
The thing that got me is that final stab in the throat that is again done in silhouette. It's not like a slash, it's and then it just sticks there. It's like, you can feel it.
Yeah, and I loved the fact that you get actually the killing part silhouetted off screen. Like they go fight and they're fighting and they're beating the snot out of each other, throwing each other over tables, hitting each other with chairs. I'm like, holy crap. And then they take that weird turn where they go in and you're seeing the rest of the fight in the silhouette. And when they go back there, they're not, they're cutting that, but they're, little beat up. But when you get Maggie coming around the corner after she's cut Lace, she's like bloody. Completely different than when her and Lace first went in the back and you went to the silhouette of the fight. You're like, holy shit, these two just.
I fully expected Maggie to just like stumble over and die as well. Like they both kind of finished each other off. Oof.
But this is Jack Hill is an interesting talent to be able to give you those elements that people acquaint with films like this, the grindhouse elements, if you will, but also give you a story with interesting characters to where you're like, how am I invested in this?
I was a huge Tarantino fan, and I remember this. Maybe it was 25 years ago because I remember the whole thing of Tarantino presents Switchblade Sisters. I'm like, what's that about? It's like, it's from the 70s. It's not a new movie. I don't care.
Yeah.
But now, having watched it, I think you mentioned this part. It totally makes sense that he would be a big fan of this movie. I'm glad that I watched it when I did, but I just think of how much I would have, how much I could have benefited from seeing this movie, 25 years ago. I think it would have changed my life.
Same here. I wish I would have rented it all the times I saw it in the video store.
Yeah, but and you look at this, and then you look at some of the other films that Tarantino presents, but especially this one for sure. If you look at this one and you think of like Kill Bill for sure. It's like, wow, there's a number of like influences in here with this, like almost like Kill Bill is like like the bride could have been Maggie, who easily could have been Maggie, and this is after Maggie leaves the gang or whatever. Kill
and
Bill,
also Death Proof.
Oh yeah,
because you have this gang of tough ass girls. So yeah, this had a lot. Tarantino really loved this movie, and it shows in his film work.
And it's not a bad thing. I don't mind influences, and it's our mantra here on the show. I'm sure our listeners are tired of us hearing it, but this is why we should go back and watch these older films sometimes, because you get to see those influences and see what your maybe favorite filmmaker actually enjoys, and how that influenced how they made their film.
Yeah, go watch Coffee and Foxy Brown and think of
then watch Jackie Brown.
Think of Jackie Brown.
Yeah. It's you can see the influences and the nuggets there of what they borrowed from, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, they still made those films their own, but you can definitely, they got that feel. I love the vibe of Switchblade Sisters. I mean, you watch this isn't, I mean, we've all do it, and if you watch enough films, you can kind of get the emotion or the vibe of a film usually when you watch it in the first like 10 minutes or whatever, and you can tell, oh, this is going to be a softcore Skinamax type film. Oh, this is just going to be a sleazy like excuse for nudity, like a lot of ski comedies in the 80s, or just comedies in the 80s. But this one, it starts off with those exploitation elements, but you're like, no, wait, this is actually a film. This is actually a story. It's not just, oh, we're getting from one spicy scene to another. There's very few of that in here. Any of the nudity in here is because of actions being taken, not necessarily nice actions being taken by most of the characters, except for the one person soliciting out of the grodiest high school bathroom I've ever seen.
Well, even she was fully clothed. I mean,
she flashes real quick.
Yeah. But I mean, like the thing is, like in the juvie bathroom brawl, one girl's shirt kind of comes open, but again, like you were saying, Mark, it feels incidental to the scene. It's not like her shirt comes open because she gets cut and all of a sudden she's completely out of it, and all of a sudden all the other girls are they're all their clothes got caught on these nails. They're in this bathroom and they're fully naked. Oh no!
Like Alexandra Daddario in that Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, where like her shirt just completely popped open, where it was just like. Just covering her nipples, and that was
the strongest. That was the strongest shirt in the history.
You're right. It did not move from those boobs.
I will never forgive the director of that film, because from what I had read, she wanted to do that scene topless, and the director said no. Can you imagine that? What?
Got to get that. Yeah, whatever scene. But no, everything in here. It's what it is. You don't have the male gaze lens with those scenes, is what it is for the most part, I would say. Where you specifically get a shot of like a close-up shot of the topless, or a close-up shot after say the shirt gets ripped off. You don't have shirt gets ripped off, we cut back, very close-up shot of the nudity.
I mean, there's more of that in Coffee and Foxy Brown,
right.
Honestly. But but those were sexier pictures, honestly. This is
and they were also bigger releases. So they probably had more money, and the producers were like, no, we need to make our money back. We need more. It's actually Dave Campfield and I when a funny story, because when he made Cesar Nato Summer Camp Massacre, one of the complaints by distributors was that we had all these hot girls in them, but none of them get topless. So the next one we decided, okay, we're going to do it, but we're going to make it part of the storyline. So he asks one of the girls, because he's making a movie within the movie, he's like, oh, we need you to take your top off now. And the whole time we're shooting her, neck and above. And then finally we shoot right below, and he tells her there's not going to be any nudity in these pictures. Oh, okay, thank God. And the note we got back was, can we linger on her breast for like 3 more seconds?
Oh my God.
Like, how?
3 seconds is a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. No, but and that, what I'm saying though with this is, like some other films you would specifically get like that. You get a frame or two, you get a framed shot of her close up. Oh, the clothes got ripped off, and in here, it's a little bit more natural because they're fighting and the clothes get ripped. I mean, guys' shirts get ripped when they're fighting, and you get that here where they're tussling.
And like you said, there's no like, oh my God, we need to get a close up of the boobies. It's just, it's still the same shot, and it's going. This is what happens.
And I think the cool thing is like the women in this movie are very attractive, but they're not hot. They don't feel overly made up or commercial. I mean, the closest you get really is Maggie, because she's more kind of well put together in a lot of, especially in her introduction scene, where you think she's just the random girl at the table that the bikers are going to mess with, and it turns out she's something completely different and the main character in the movie, right? But that's the thing, is like the fashion in this movie is really on point, and the girls are really cute. And so you're like, you don't necessarily, I'm trying to find my words. It would almost cheapen it if they all of a sudden lost their clothes. There's still that kind of mystique of like, oh, they're the girls next door, but they're also in reform school or something. They should be in reform school.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you really have it, folks. It's Switchblade Sisters, not the film you're going to expect given the title and even the cover and that going into it. And we covered a lot here. We didn't cover everything. There's still a lot of interesting angles and stuff with it, which is what makes this film, above the other types of films like this. It really is an actual story and movie and an interesting take on your gang genre. Quite a bit.
This has happened before, Mark, but I mean, honestly, you recommending this movie to me now, this Switchblade Sisters is probably now in my top 10 films of all time. I'm putting this up there with like Lawrence of Arabia, Citizen Kane, Pulp Fiction, probably. Switchblade Sisters might be at number 10, but it's in the 10.
It's in the 10. Well, I am honored. Joe, your final thought with Switchblade Sisters?
Really, really love this movie. Like we've been saying for a while now, it was not quite what we expected, but it just works so well. There's never a dull moment in it. And yeah, it is. Man, it is so much fun. That's all I could really say about it. This was fun. I'm so glad I watched this.
As am I. I'm glad I was able to work this in here. And yeah, go ahead.
Oddly enough, the original title was The Jezebels.
Yeah.
And apparently it went out under the title The Jezebels and made like no money. So they re-released it as Switchblade Sisters.
And that's another surprise, is when they ditched the daggers and they're trying to come up with a new name for the gang. I thought for sure it was going to be the Switchblade Sisters.
Yeah.
Because that's the name of the movie. I thought they were going to do that whole thing, but no, Jezebels works just fine.
Jezebels works just fine. So there you have it, folks. Switchblade Sisters, seek it out. I ordered it as well. I honestly, I went ahead and ordered it. I'm like, oh, I don't have this movie. How the hell do I not have it?
Oddly enough, I bought the Tarantino version that you were watching because it was like, I've had my eye on it for a while and it was like $7 used. And now I'm like, yeah, I might get that Arrow Blu-ray.
Looks like there's a ton of features on it. And it's Arrow.
Yeah.
So, they're like
Arrow does a great job. So
they do.
Yeah.
They do.
And so sponsor us.
And so since we are an Over the Hill special, folks, yes, we get to spin the wheel of random to see what next month's special is going to be. So this has the titles of the months that I came up with. I did a little different rather than the title of the movies. So we are going to spin this wheel and see what next month, for the month of March, our theme is going to be. So spin away. Let's see what we get here. And we get... just snuck in there. Wasteland Wanderin'.
All right.
So Wasteland Wanderin' are movies where we have our characters wandering the wasteland. And in this case, let me just pull that off. So in this case, we are going to have, where is it? Let me scroll here. There it is. It's going to be Six String Samurai. We're going to have Steel Dawn. Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Hey!
And our Over the Hill special for next month will be A Boy and His Dog, starring a young Don Johnson.
I have not seen any of those. This is going to be exciting.
Six String Samurai was in 98. Steel Dawn was 87. I think that's Swayze. And Hell Comes to Frogtown. We were talking about wrestling in our pre-show. That's got Mr. Roddy Piper. Oh yeah. That's campy. That's
the only one of the four I've seen. So we covered it on the last drive-in a couple of years ago.
So yeah, March we are going to be Wasteland Wandering. Yeah, with Patrick Swayze is in Steel Dawn. So I haven't watched that one in a long time. Nice cable fodder there. So and with that, this is where I give my wonderful crew members their license to shill. So by all means, Joe, you are first. You got anything to shill? Go ahead.
Nothing to show right now, as I'm really only doing this podcast right now aside from the work I'm doing. I just got my new assignments for the last drive-in, so I'm going to be doing that the next couple days. But new season's coming up in about a month, so there's that.
Already. Wow, yeah. So yeah, the last drive-in, support that because you'll probably be watching something Joe worked on.
Check it out. Check it out on Shudder. It's a lot of fun, and Joe Bob Briggs talks about a lot of these exploitation classics on there. We constantly have them on. So yeah, that's all I'm doing right now.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you could join us tonight. And Mr. Ian Simmons, I know you got stuff to shill. The floor is yours.
I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com and also right here on YouTube. I'm also here on the Spoiler Room every Monday night. But let's see, over at Kicking the Seat this week, we're going to be doing a live stream review of Heart Eyes, the new Valentine's Day slasher movie.
Slasher? I haven't seen much about it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. Yeah, a lot of good stuff coming up on the show. So check it out.
Fantastic. So check all of that stuff out. Links in the description of the podcast. And as always, Special Mark Productions for all your Movie Man needs. A link will be going up there soon for in case you missed our posts and stuff for January. It takes me a while to get that page together, but there'll be a link for in case you missed it. I've got an interview with Adam Steigert where we talk about his post-production that he's in now on his film Ombus 2. And Katie Glidewell and I got together and we talked about Companion, which will be dropping this week as well, a co-review. So very interesting film. So check all of that, specialmarkproductions.com. Thank you so much. And next week, what do we got next week? I don't even have that up now. We've got something next week. We got we got Girl Gang next week from the 50s.
Point I wanted to make. This is a Girl Gang movie, and we're showing Girl Gang next week.
That's great. We're from the 50s. We are watching Girl Gang. So hope you tune in for that. Thank you for our live viewers we had tonight. Always a pleasure to have folks watch us babble about films. And yeah, until next time, we'll just say good night, everyone.
Good night. Switchblade was